Hello, my name is Stephanie and welcome to Antiquity Academy. Alright, this video marks the beginning of the early colonialism series where we're going to be talking about the arrival of Spanish conquistadors, the establishment of the first colonies, the European settlers, and the destruction of indigenous people. Yay. And you can't talk about early colonialism without talking about this piece of crap, Christopher Columbus. Columbus was born in 1451 in the Republic of Genoa. During his teenage years, he went on multiple trade voyages throughout the Mediterranean and Aegean seas, which brought him to the Greek island of Chios, which is actually where my grandfather's from. This is actually the closest Columbus ever got to Asia. During his first Atlantic voyage in 1476, Columbus's fleet was attacked off the coast of Portugal. His ship was sunk, but he managed to swim to shore. He must have thought Portugal was pretty great because he decided to stay. He settled in Lisbon and married Filipa Perestrello. The two had a son named Diego in 1480, however Filipa died shortly after. So Columbus picked up and moved to Spain, where he had his second son Fernando with Beatriz Enrique de Arana in 1488. Columbus participated in several expeditions to Africa, where he learned about the currents flowing from the Canary Islands. After the fall of Constantinople in 1453, traveling through the Middle East was dangerous for European tradesmen. So Columbus thought sailing west across the Atlantic would be safer and quicker. He just didn't expect to run into two other continents. Columbus estimated the circumference of the Earth to be about 25,255 kilometers, or 15,692 miles. When in reality it was 40,000 kilometers or 24,854 miles. He also estimated the distance between the Canary Islands and Japan to be about 3,700 kilometers or 2,300 miles, when it was really 19,630 kilometers or 12,200 miles. I guess it's good that they crashed into Central America because there wasn't a ship available that could carry the amount of food and fresh water necessary to complete the journey. So Columbus and his men would have died of starvation, dehydration, or scurvy before they ever reached Asia. Columbus needed funding, so he first approached King John II of Portugal because Portugal was the main European power interested in pursuing Western trade routes. Columbus requested 3 ships and 1/10 of the expedition's revenue. He also wanted to be named governor of any lands that he discovered, as well as the Great Admiral of the Ocean Sea, aka the Atlantic Ocean. Not only did Portuguese maritime experts disagree with Columbus's distance calculations, but Bartholomew Diaz had recently completed a successful voyage around the Horn of Africa, which opened new eastern trade routes to Portugal, so they denied his funding. So Columbus approached the Spanish monarchy of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile. After hearing Columbus's estimations, the court advised the monarchs not to fund the expedition. However, Isabella and Ferdinand wanted to expand the Spanish Empire and spread Catholicism. However, they were busy fighting the Moors, so Columbus was put on a wait list. After capturing the Moorish Emirate of Granada in January of 1492, the Spanish crown agreed to fund Columbus's expedition. Columbus was named admiral and was promised an unusually generous portion of the profits. However, it was later discovered that Ferdinand and Isabella only agreed to these terms because they were pretty sure Columbus wouldn't make it back. So, in August of 1492, Columbus set sail with the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria and began the voyage that would be known as the discovery of the New World, even though Leif Erikson beat him by 500 years. After 30-some days of sailing with a panicky, homesick crew, Columbus landed on what he believed was Japan, but it was actually the Bahamas. He named the island San Salvador, where he encountered natives mostly of the Taino tribe, and he noticed that they wore jewelry made of, you guessed it, gold. He moved on to Cuba and Hispaniola, which is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, exploring what he believed to be outer Chinese islands. On Christmas Day of 1492, the Santa Maria was wrecked on a reef off the coast of Hispaniola. The ship was salvaged and the lumber was used to build Villa de la Navidad, or Christmas Town, which sounds really festive, but it really wasn't. 39 men stayed behind on the settlement while Columbus returned to Spain. When Columbus returned to Spain, he was greeted with monuments, a parade, the whole shebang. So he decided to impress Isabella and Ferdinand by throwing around some gold nuggets and showing off some of the natives he had kidnapped. Then they agreed to fund another expedition. He completed the transatlantic voyage again and explored Guadalupe, the Virgin Islands, and the rest of the Greater Antilles before returning to Hispaniola. It was there that he discovered that Christmas Town had been destroyed and all the settlers had been killed, so he enslaved the natives, as per usual. Before leaving to explore the rest of the Caribbean, which led to his discovery of Venezuela, Columbus left his brother Bartholomew and his brother-in-law Diego in charge of the newly rebuilt Villa de la Navidad. But Bartholomew and Diego were terrible, so the settlers began to riot. The settlers complained of being misled by Columbus's promises of riches, so the Spanish crown sent a royal official who arrested Columbus and his brothers and brought them back to Spain in chains. Though stripped of his titles and all of his riches, Columbus convinced the monarchs to fund one last expedition, which set sail in 1502. He sailed along the eastern coast of Central America in an effort to find a pass to the Indian Ocean, but a storm destroyed his ship and stranded he and his men in Cuba. By this point, the natives just weren't having it, so they denied Columbus and his men any supplies. However, a lunar eclipse frightened them into thinking that the Europeans were punishing them by taking away the moon. So they agreed to feed them until the royal governor of Hispaniola sent a rescue mission. Columbus returned to Spain in 1504 and made multiple attempts to regain his titles before dying 2 years later on May 20th, 1506. Now, in elementary school, we all learned that fun little rhyme in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but let's talk about all the fun stuff that they couldn't tell us about in elementary school in this week's list of terrible things. Number 1. Columbus stole a sailor's reward. This is possibly the nicest thing on this list. 10,000 maravedis, which was a sailor's yearly wage, were to be rewarded to a person who first caught sight of a new land. A sailor aboard the Pinta had spotted San Salvador, but Columbus later claimed that he had spotted the island first and got the poor guy's money. Number 2. He made the natives sound terrible. In letters that he had sent to Isabella and Ferdinand, Columbus painted the natives as cannibalistic and savage in order to more easily convince the crown to let him enslave them. Number 3. Christmastown. I'm sure Columbus made up some wonderful story about how the natives decided to randomly destroy the settlement and kill all the settlers, but let's talk about what really happened. While Columbus was sailing back to Spain, the 39 men that he left behind on the settlement raped the native women, tested the sharpness of their blades by cutting natives in half or severing their limbs, threw natives into vats of boiling soap, and killed their babies. Yeah, I'm gonna say the settlers deserved it. Number 4. Slavery. Columbus forced thousands of natives to work in gold mines. Those that refused to work were either beheaded or had their ears cut off, and those who did not meet their monthly quota had their hands cut off and tied around their necks. And number 5. Columbus sold native girls, some of them as young as 9, as sex slaves to his men. Columbus killed thousands of Central America's indigenous people, and now it's celebrated every year. Thanks, Columbus. Don't forget to subscribe, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Thanks for watching.